my strategy. I've taken 2 to a billion, Vital Proteins, Men's Health, the LA Clippers, Titleist, TaylorMade, you name it, my hands are in it. I've had a lot of success on my own alone. I was a 22-week New York Times bestseller without ever spending $1 in paid media. We're helping our customers to resolve a pain point in their life because that's what determines the success that somebody's going to have.
This is the Content Capitalists Podcast. We talk to business owners who've used video to grow their businesses to $1 million a year or more. How they did it, what worked, what didn't. Welcome to the Content Capitalists with your host, Ken Okazaki.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast, where I have conversations with entrepreneurs doing at least $1 million in their business, many times a lot more. And today I've got somebody with me who I've been following for a long time, but this is the first time, believe it or not, this is the first time I get to have a one-on-one conversation with the one and only George Bryant. George, welcome to the show.
Man, I'm stoked. I literally was thinking, as you were speaking, like, I feel like I know you. Like I've watched your journey on Facebook alone, like, because we've been friends and you're always in my feed. So like, I'm really like stoked to have this conversation. And I went and got a fresh cup of coffee about 10 minutes ago. So I'm like really ready to chill.
Perfect. And I'll say one thing about you. Out of the people I interviewed, there's one person I interviewed and who I've known for some time. I've gotten coaching from Alex Sharfin. And
Yep.
I've never heard anyone speak more highly about somebody else than Alex did about you. And then I went deep into the podcast he did about you and interviewed you multiple times. And for some reason, and I think we both know how this works, but I feel like I know you and I have this sense of familiarity with you, even though this is the first time that we're actually having a real-time video conversation and never met in real life, as far as I know.
Nope. Everything has been asynchronous until this moment. And it's like literally like I have butterflies in my heart and belly and I get a little teary because this is kind of the reason I do what I do and what gets me going every day. And it's a measurable KPI for me to know that I'm a very different man than I was when I started, that I wasn't proud of. And so I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And usually before I get on a call, I will do about half an hour of research and I'll go into the backstory and looking at these different things. But I didn't do that today just because I've already have this wealth of content that I've consumed either by you or about you that
Yep.
I felt like, let's just jump into it. So the format of this, and this is what I want to do because we have a lot of people who are watching this or listening, that a lot of people are not at 7 figures a year. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know for me, before I ever hit that was like this holy grail kind of thing. And there's an emotional connection with that number for some reason. But
Yep.
Can we go back to before you ever got there? Like, what were you doing? What were you, wheeling and dealing? What's your story?
Yeah, man. I love this question. And I shared this, before we started recording, like, luckily I speak 90% of my day to 6-figure entrepreneurs. And I still live in that world because I just launched a new company ground up like 6 weeks ago. And so that one is the only one that's not at 7 figures, but yet again, it doesn't change the game. I have to start everything over again. And so I kind of live in that world. It's really, really interesting because I'm going to answer this question from my current view, but I'll describe what it felt like when I was there. And so I got lucky early on as an entrepreneur that I kind of accidentally became a food blogger. And the reason I say I got lucky is because the epitome of that passion of mine to heal at its core existence was content. Every day was making content, either making a new recipe, reshooting a recipe, photos, food stuff. Like, the bloodline and the heartbeat of that entire business was content. And I didn't start it as a business. I started it as an accountability tool to teach myself how to cook, to cure my bulimia. And when it started making money, the Marine Corps said, hey, it's been 13 years. Thanks for your active duty service, but you're broken. we're kicking you out. Not retired, not benefits, like we're kicking you out. And so it all kind of started accidentally, my entrepreneur. But because the groundwork of me becoming an entrepreneur and the first time I ever made money as an entrepreneur was on the backbone of content. And so I kind of was created by my environment as an organic marketer without knowing that that's what it was at the time. And so I say I got lucky in that sense, because now in the lens that I have, I will tell you that if you don't understand the importance of content, you're going to lose the game. And you're going to continue to lose the game until it hurts bad enough that you have to accept the absolute power and value of content. And so content does so many things that it should be the core requirement. Content can be the base that all your ideas and your content come from, because somebody asked you a question, you record it on camera. Content's the way that when you share your humanity, people create connections with you that open them up to learning from you or leaning into your business. Content is a diary of your entire journey of a human and an entrepreneur, with however much you share to document, that is literally writing your biography and your success story as you are part of it, while giving you a substantial amount of evidence to constantly reflect on, to never make blind decisions because you've taken so many swings at bat, to being assets that are evergreen that you can use thousands and thousands and thousands of times and thousands of ways to reach and help more people. So I'm answering this question instead of a statement with the story to summarize down to say that I think that content is the most important thing, irregardless of company. And
Thank you so much.
That's kind of my TED talk on content.
That works. Now, you touched on a few things that the listener who may not have heard of you before may have been piqued by the curiosity around this. Tell us a bit about the Marines and that when you first put yourself on the map with a certain book, I believe, or what? Yep. Did the book come first, or did you get famous first? Tell me about that.
No, the ebook came before I got famous. Yeah, the ebook came before I got famous. So I joined the Marine Corps. I left for boot camp on July 29th of 2002, and I was running away from drug abuse, homelessness, sexual abuse, right? Homeless 13, 14 on. And I knew the only chance I had was to leave. And so I joined the hardest thing I could find. And so I went into the Marine Corps from trauma. I was already struggling with an eating disorder, bulimia. And so had an entire career, 3 combat deployments, almost lost my legs, had 7 concussions, which is why they medically separated me. And so in that whole span, I'd lost my father, and we had healed our relationship from my pretty tumultuous childhood. And I watched him die of cancer, and he was kind of like my last thing. I had my younger brother, but he was like my last thing, and there was a lot of healing there. And it forced some perspective, and he happened to pass like a month before I went back to Afghanistan.
Oh.
And so then it gets stacked on with losing a couple of my Marines and experiencing some things that no human should ever have to experience. And so it forced this perspective. And so I just realized I didn't want to be sick anymore. And I didn't want to be bulimic. I didn't want to have all that stuff. And so I just happened to be doing CrossFit because in Afghanistan, that was the only gym that they built. And so I started CrossFit, and through that, I found Paleo. And when I started eating Paleo, I felt better, but I didn't know how to cook. And I was like, well, if I teach myself how to cook, it'll cure the bulimia. So I just posted a recipe a day, every day for like a year, telling people how I made somebody else's recipe and what I learned. And that was like my accountability journal. And so after about 18 months of doing that, right around when the Marine Corps was kicking me out, someone was like, hey man, I really wish you'd make an ebook. And I was like, what the heck is an ebook? And he's like, it's like a digital book. And I was like, of my recipes? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, but they're all on my website. He's like, yeah, but they're not in one place. And I was like, all right, cool. Give me the weekend. So all weekend, I open a Microsoft Word document and I put images in and typed the recipe and like put page numbers on it, called it Caveman Feast. And then I sent it to him. And he's like, why did you send this to me? And I was like, because you asked me to. And he's like, no, I wanted to pay you for this. And I was like, why would you pay me for this? It's free on my website. And he's like, because it's all in one place for me to save and use. You should list it on this website called ClickBank, and you should write a blog post about it on your website, and you should email all of your people and post it on social media. And I had a customer, like my first paying customer, teach me how to be a marketer. And so I did what he said. And the first day I made $36,000. The second day I made $68,000. The third day I made like $110,000. And then my first ever digital product made $1 million. And in hindsight, it's because all I did was provide free value every day for 18 months and connect with people. And then they asked me for something and I made it, and I asked them what they wanted to pay for it, and I gave it to them, and they all bought it.
That's amazing.
And that has been the secret to my success from day one. And it is still the guiding principle of how I operate every single business, every single offer, every single product. Like it is the ethos that I live by.
That's amazing. I love how you accidentally flip the script on what most people go into business doing. You weren't thinking about business. You're like, hey, this is useful for me. And if I document it, I will do better myself.
Yeah.
And someone else had to say, hey, you might be able to make money on this. And
I literally,
like most people will say, I want to make money. Hey, let's research online. What's the best ROI for my time? And what are the trends? None of that happened. Do you think you were lucky, or do you think it's just a part of your nature that gives you that advantage, that instinctive advantage?
I think the self-deprecating side of me calls it lucky. But it is 100% intentional, and by design, it is my nature. And it is my nature that came from a wound that was turned into a tool, because that was a survival mechanism when you don't have anything as a kid. It's reinventing yourself and figuring out a solution and reading people and understanding people to be able to get the things that you need. But when you heal the trauma, that becomes an incredible tool to connect with people, to empathize with people, to understand people at a very deep level. And I feel like because of the life that I lived and the things that I experienced, I have just a default mode of hearing what people are not saying and responding to that. And I know that sounds like a little woo-woo, but it's just with my innate obsession with like human psychology and consciousness and my own healing and therapy and coaching thousands of people. And so I do recognize that it is a part of my nature. It took me about 7 years to recognize the power of it as a principle to be utilized across the board agnostically. And so it was an accident in some sense. Like I didn't set out of like, I'm going to post a recipe a day so I get all these people to follow me and fill the bucket of reciprocity so that I can pretend to not know how to make an ebook and then list it on ClickBank. Right? Like I didn't. And
how many people since have probably seen what you did and then try to copy you and then didn't reach that same level, right? Because it's
so many.
And then there's this famous quote, which I believe has truth to it, but it's so misused, is success leaves clues. It is 100% applicable in so many ways. But if you try to copy exactly what somebody else is doing as per what is innately unique to them, that's where it fails.
Oh, I have a thought for this on you, man, for you on this.
Good.
Oh yeah. If you want to keep going,
I want to keep going there, but I just want to say one thing, and whatever you're thinking, I don't want you to lose that.
I won't.
I had the privilege a little while ago to, spend a couple of weeks, with Richard Branson in his safari park. And, he's got a crowd of people around him always trying to get his attention. But I just had this one question I want to ask him, because I'm in business, I create content, and I'm in multiple businesses. And I'm always wondering, like, where do I put my creative energy into? Because there can only be one priority. That's the definition of priority. So I got a chance and I said, Richard, you've got a whole bunch of businesses. You've started a lot of them from scratch. You bought a bunch too. How do you choose where to put your best energy? And then he goes, he stops and thinks for a minute and he says, it's just wherever I feel the most passion. And he goes, I water that flower and it grows. And he goes, and it's never profitable at first. It's
Nope.
never profitable at first. And then I put management in place to figure out how to make it profitable.
Yep.
After I create a great experience. And I was like,
Yep.
wow, I love that. And I think that has to do with the same instinct you had in you're passionate about your diet, about the food, about sharing it, and then
Yep.
figure out how to monetize it later.
Yeah, 1,000%. And you know what Richard Branson alluded to, and he is one of the greats and one that I've studied and incredible, is it's actually the only way for it to succeed, because it's the only sustainable way that when the times get hard, there is enough passion and alignment left to push to find the solution that nobody else will find, that will put you in the 1% of entrepreneurs that make it past $400,000 a year. And
There's only
that's
1%.
the
You're
difference.
serious.
Dude, I'm telling you, and don't quote me on that because I haven't read them in a couple of years, but I've went and read these stats. Like I have to thank Gary Vee for reminding me of this one, but like, did you know that like the top 1% earners in the United States of America are in 400,000 and above? The top 1% in the United States of America.
The richest country in the world.
I get hundreds of DMs a month from entrepreneurs telling me I'm only making 850 grand a year. I'm only making 2.1 million in the business and, you know, paying myself blank. And I'm like, only? What the fuck are you trying to do? Like, how about you just take a second and look back at where you came from and where you started and what you said you wanted, and recognize that you probably already have all of it. And the moment you recognize that, it's actually will give you the clarity you need to break through the next income level. But you don't keep growing by constantly thinking you don't have enough. You only grow when you accept that what you already have is enough, because it's the only thing that keeps you truly in alignment, in my belief. That's my belief.
I love that. I love it. And I'm just going to let that sit there, because I was going to try to add to that. There's nothing to add to that. It's just is what it is. And
I reflect deeply on this stuff, man. Like I took the stillness practice, and as Keith Cunningham calls thinking time, to a level of obsession, really doing some like inner work and really reflecting on like all the mistakes I've made, the millions I've lost and the millions I've made, the businesses I've closed, the CEOs I've fired, the business partners that I've had great relationships on, and the ones that have fallen apart. And I have just thought and analyzed and observed and like obsessed about finding all the good that came from all of it, but underneath it, finding the principles that allowed it to be successful, which if I continually practice every single day will mitigate any damage or roadblocks in the future. And if I happen to come across any more, then they become a part of the toolbox, and then they become a tool to repair the road again. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
would you consider yourself a philosopher at this point?
You know, what's funny is I've asked myself that question only ever 2 times. And they were both on international flights when I ran out of movies to watch. And I think it's because I had to realize that I was just constantly distracting my brain, because I really do think deeply a lot. But I don't self-recognize as like a deep thinker or a philosopher. I would self-recognize as like a, instead of a toe tapper, like a waist deeper in multiple pools, where I don't want to know so little that I'm dangerously incompetent. I want to know enough to have an understanding and then also application in my life so I can speak from experience. But if it serves my need and my understanding, then I won't take it to mastery per se, unless that demands itself as a need for me. And so I go through cycles with my breath work practices, with my plant medicine practices, with my habits as an entrepreneur, with my recording schedule in my podcast, with the frequency in which I do speaking events, the frequency in which I do podcast appearances. And it's constantly like really just riding the wave with the barometer for me. just to allow myself to be curious and excited about it, but not have this pressure that if I'm curious about it, that I have to know all of it or that I have to master all of it. Right. And so like, I love trying like new tech, like you, like, I love watching your posts about video stuff and tools. And I'm like, yes, like, okay, cool. Like I love like toe tapping, and I'll try like 30 softwares, not because I'm distracted or because I had the intention of using them all, but I get excited about exploring the options and what things people are using and how they're using them, because it helps my brain think differently.
Oh, thank you. And when you were talking earlier about how the only way you're going to succeed is if you're passionate about something, God, it is so fun for me to tinker with technology. Like,
yes,
I would do it for free. And
yes.
And literally the reason I got into, building these kits for people is because somebody who you probably heard of, Alex Hormozy, he reached out and he's like, hey, I hear you're the guy when it comes to video. Could you make something that travels well? And I was like, nah, we don't do that. We're an agency. We produce media. Yeah. He's got big muscles, and he arm wrestled me down to, figuratively, to actually design something for him, which was probably one of the best decisions ever. Yep. And I just made a mental parallel there. Someone had to tell me that I should make something that could sell. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. It's amazing.
Yep.
Could you, for the sake of everybody who's listening, this is George Bryant, guys, give us an overview of what kind of businesses you're involved in right now. And because we went straight into some deep conversations, which I love.
We did. I love it.
The reason why I only invite people here who are making at least $1 million is because I've listened to a few podcasts and it sounds like people are just regurgitating stuff. Yep. And when I deep dive into who that person was, no offense to them, because I think they're trying, but they didn't really have so much success yet. So the value I gave to what they said automatically went down a little bit. So everybody who's listening knows that everybody I interview has had some level of success. And that's what we want to talk about. So let's do a little bit of the humble brag stuff.
I appreciate you pulling this out of me and recognize it's a shadow of mine that I don't use often. So yes, I've had a lot of success on my own alone. I was a 22-week New York Times bestseller without ever spending $1 in paid media. I spent $41,000 to make an Apple app and ended up hitting #1 in the world and featured by Apple as the top health app of 2015. I made multiple 7 figures with a paleo food blog and organically grew it to 9 million people a month on my website, 1 million social media followers. I had a banana bread recipe repinned 4.5 billion times, to the point where the founders of Pinterest flew my wife and I up to San Francisco the day after our wedding because they wanted to ask me how. So that was just personal. And then I went on to be a consultant. And as a consultant, I've scaled over 100 companies to 9 figures with my strategy. I've taken 2 to 1 billion. You know them. They're Vital Proteins, On It, Men's Health. I've worked with the LA Clippers, Titleist, TaylorMade. I mean, you name it, my hands are in it. They've touched it. They're friends of mine. And then through that journey, I started investing my time in companies in exchange for equity. And so I own a tactical diaper bag company for dads called High Speed Daddy, and we've bootstrapped organically to over 15 million in revenue, veteran owned, veteran operated with 3 employees. We've done that. I own a organic skincare and dental company called Primal Life Organics. We're up in the high 8 figures, vertically integrated. Everything's made in-house in Ohio, teams in Ohio, shipped out of Ohio, manufactured there in the office. It's pretty cool. I have a toy gun company that I'm an advisor in. We went from 7 figures in 21 to 9 figures in 2022. So that was an absolute incredible jump. So I'm involved in there, retail, online, spend about $10 million a month across the board in paid media and oversee the strategy, the marketing teams, the CMOs. I have an anti-aging company called the Human Optimization Project that we just launched, hotbox.life, which is absolutely incredible, combating the 12 tenets and downfalls of aging with like curated supplements that aren't traditionally used to help people really thrive in their health and their life. I just got offered equity last week in a new wearable technology company. like a $50 million device that uses PEMF and ultra low radio frequencies to help entrepreneurs and people focus and tune in. That's pretty exciting. And I think I'm probably missing like 2 or 3 until they call me or text me and I'm like, oh yeah, that one too. So that's kind of like an overview of what I'm up to. And irregardless of category, whether it's in my podcast, whether it's at my events, whether I'm coaching entrepreneurs, or whether I'm running my companies and leading the marketing teams, every single ounce of my focus is on customer journey. It's on marketing, authentic marketing, content, like all the foundational principles under customer journeys is all I focus on. And that's where the success truly comes from. So that's kind of an overview of like what I'm up to.
Wow. That's, the one thing I didn't hear much of in that list, which is pure information kind of company products, which a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. You're doing real products, real services.
Yeah. And I forgot too, I also in my own company sell 7 figures plus in information products that I forgot to tell you about.
Oh,
like that's
there's
my
that
company.
Too.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, who wouldn't buy that after, hearing about all the rest that you've done? I've seen you across a lot of things. I didn't know there was that many different things going on simultaneously.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
And I want to pitch you something. You ready for this? You know how Tiffany has copyrighted that shade of green? Yes. Or like literally you cannot use that exact color, blue/green, whatever, Tiffany blue, right? Yeah. You got to do pink. I
tried, man.
You did literally.
I know, but I did it. I did it with like a for hire representation consulting attorney to submit it for me. And I just don't think we did good enough. So I have to like get an actual trademark attorney to like, schmoozle it the Tiffany way and figure out how they did that. But yeah, it's actually, I love that you said that because it's on my radar.
So tell me about the story behind, pink glasses, pink boots, pink guns.
Yeah. Pink. Dude, I got it all. I got it all. My new truck
do not show me your underwear, please. But no, I'm imagining they might be.
Well, it'll be TMI, but I've been commando since my first deployment, because when you live in the desert and you don't shower for like 4 weeks at a time, you learn things that you just don't.
There is no thing as too much information on this podcast. Thank you.
No, I love it, man. I love it. I mean, I would do the show with you for like 4 hours. So I have no hard stop. So here's the funny thing about pink. I've actually always loved bright colors. Like black and white are my favorite wardrobe colors. And then I always had like a pop. And when my dad got cancer, it became Livestrong yellow. It was like bright orange sometimes. And I don't know why. It was always like shoes or whatever. So that was like kind of always in me. And then I met my wife, and she made a rule with me that she wouldn't marry me until she was allowed to clean some shit out of my wardrobe. And so in the course of our relationship, some of it got cleaned out, but then it turned into a joke because, my wife thinks I'm attractive. And that when she traveled, she should have kept some of the outfits because they would have been the only thing she allowed me to wear when she was gone, because it was guaranteed to keep me single. And so I didn't really have much of it. And then she got pregnant with our son. I had a mohawk. We figured out it was a boy, so I dyed my mohawk blue. And my wife's very stylish. So when the baby was born, she started buying him clothes and cute pink tops, and she got him these pink shoes. And they were these like silicone shoes, like Crocs, but they look like Converse. They're so comfortable, easy to clean. And after he got them, I realized they made adult shoes and they matched. So I got matching pink shoes with my son. And so I wore these for 2.5 years with my son. And then he came home from school one day and said, "Daddy, you can't wear pink. It's a girl's color." And I said, "Who told you that?" And he said, "My teacher." And I said, "Get in the car." We went and jumped in the M5, and I bulleted to a school and sat down with the director. And I had a very serious conversation while also giving a history lesson that I Googled on the way over about pink, because I wanted to be, woke and have some evidence there. Self-admitting my fault in that right there. But they agreed with me. And so I was like, I am going to wear pink until my son thinks it's cool again. And so I just replaced everything, but I just kept wearing black, but I kept pink shoes. I ended up giving a keynote at Ryan Moran's Brand Builder Summit, and I had pink shoes on, and the keynote was kind of epic. And then about 6 months later, I'm at Traffic and Conversion, and I got stopped 40 times on day one. And they're like, "You're that marketer customer, the pink shoe guy." And I was like, oh shit, I just made a new social trigger. Am I okay with it? And then I was like, I actually am okay with it. I love it. And I just kind of kept it as a part of it. And then I brought on a color psychologist on my staff, like in my outer circle of people I consult. I consult her on every brand, every one of my clients. And I actually consulted her, and it just so happens that the color pink that I chose represents revolution. And I teach relationships beat algorithms. Like, I'm challenging our entire industry. And so it worked. And so then we did a site redesign and like vertically integrated it everywhere. And the color psychologist said, you already wear blue light blockers. Why not just get pink ones? And then that's where the pink glasses get introduced. And now they're kind of like my alter ego. They're like my Clark Kent Superman. Like I only wear them when I'm recording or when I'm on stage, and I don't wear them when I'm not. And so they've kind of become, like, as Todd Herman would call, like my alter ego.
I love it. I mean, it works. It works. Like I think I could kind of visually just remember like the newsfeed I saw. And if there's pink in it, then the association is with you more than with anything else.
Yep.
Like you intentionally have that certain shade that stands out among everything else in any photo you do. Good job on the branding there. Again, it came about by accident. Like you didn't go out saying, I need a new marketing look. Let's do pink. So
here's what
right?
happened. Here's what happened. Yeah. So it came about by accident, but when it happened, I understood the power of it to use it as a tool because it happened by accident the first time. So I called it a social trigger. So for everybody wondering what that is, if you are an entrepreneur and you have not read the book Contagious by Jonah Berger, you don't want to be a successful entrepreneur. So if you tell me you do, I'm going to call you a liar. Start there. But a social trigger is a word or phrase that has a meaning associated with it. Like when I say just do it, you know exactly who I'm talking about, right? When we hear certain taglines and slogans, there's an association. So when it comes to social triggers, you can either utilize one, piggyback on top of one, or you can create your own, right? And so creating your own is when people create movements from scratch. Like 75 hard is a perfect example. 75 hard meant nothing, 7 years ago. And even in the first 3 years when I was psycho enough to do it, nobody else knew what I was talking about. Now, my mother-in-law, who's 72, was asking me about 75 hard. And so it became a social trigger that has a meaning. And so when I was running Civilized Caveman as a food blogger, I loved bacon. And it just so happened that I started to notice that every time I posted a bacon recipe, it got 4 to 5 times the engagement, which then led me to start sharing like bacon memes and funny things I would see, like bacon socks, and I'd post them on social and they would all go viral. And so then I started using the hashtag hugs and bacon because somebody asked me on a podcast, if I could create world peace, how would I do it? And I looked at him in a split second and I said, with hugs and bacon, bro. And he's like, that's good. And I made the hashtag. And so I grew my Facebook page almost 300,000 followers after the algorithm changes, when it went from linear to algorithmic based and everybody said it was broken, by using bacon as a social trigger, to now, by the way, in 2023, 10 years later, I still get mail to my P.O. box with bacon gifts in it because people still remember. And so that happened, and I read the book Contagious, and I now understood what I had done and how I had done it. And so once the pink thing came in, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I was okay with the pink. And then I was totally cool with the pink. So like my snowboarding gear, because I snowboard 3 days a week, I have a black and white jacket, black and white pants, a black and white board, and the entire bottom is pink. My goggles are pink. My helmet is black. My truck is getting wrapped Nardo gray with pink highlights. Like my shoes, my glasses, it's everywhere. And now I get anywhere between 30 to 50 DMs a week, and they are only one of two things. And you know the other one. It is either a lighthouse or something to do with the color pink. And so I measure my success in what I teach based on how many of those DMs and text messages I get a week. Because what that tells me is how much what I teach works and how much real estate I've poached in people's lives and how much they're thinking about me. with positive associations. And I don't say that for my ego. I say that because when they think about me, they're also reminded of the principles that they learned that made them think about me and how to engage as an entrepreneur or have a positive mindset or build a customer journey. And so like, I fucking love that. Like that excites me. That gets me going every day.
Do you ever get the question, like, how do I find that thing for myself? Like, it seems like it's by accident, right? The paleo thing, the pink thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, 1,000%. I get asked this question all the time.
And what do you say?
It's really, really funny. And I've answered it all the same. And I hate the answer. I'll tell you that right now. I hate the answer because the answer challenges me, because the true answer is you have to swing as many times as you need to figure out if you want to continue to pursue it. And you also have to have the courage that when you start swinging it consistently and you no longer enjoy swinging it, that if you choose to keep swinging it, you are choosing suffrage. That's the hard part of that answer, is that no one else can come make me pursue my passions. No one else can tell my wife that my needs have changed. No one else can tell my team that I want to go in a different direction. Nobody else can change the direction of my company. Nobody else can change what I create in podcasts. Only I can. And so what ended up happening for years is I got stuck in the trap of, okay, I don't like what I'm doing, but let me just keep consuming as much content and ask as many coaches and hire as many people and call as many mentors as possible and hope and pray that one of them tells me what my next step is, knowing that none of them will, or if they do, I'm fully aware that I'm going to end up back in the same exact place in a short amount of time because I'm going to take their advice, which is going to be out of alignment with what I truly want because I wasn't willing to take it. And then I'm going to end up feeling even more burnt out and more desperate to find clarity, which is going to make it even harder for me to believe in my own because my emotions and everything are so dysregulated. And then it is just like a massive black hole. So
I feel like you've really thought this through, because the way you're articulating this is I have to, you know how when you're watching videos nowadays, especially if it's anything more than 5 minutes, I don't know about you, but I watch it on double speed because our brains get bored too quickly. When you speak, even though it's not at a fast pace, I feel like I want to turn the speed down like 50% so I can process what you're saying as you say it. And I can tell you've thought this through 100 times minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back and watch this recording again because what you just said there, it made me feel something, and I don't know what it is, but it made me feel something. And I feel like I've got to listen to it again and process that. Yeah,
man. Yeah. I think a lot.
There's one story that stood out to me that you shared very, very briefly in a podcast. And I want to ask you about it. Just to jog your memory, you had said that you're getting paid as a consultant to help a company with their marketing.
Yep.
And you flew out there and you asked, I'm not sure if it was the director of marketing or the CEO, you asked them one question when they were trying to figure out where to put their energy in social media in their marketing. Do you remember that? What I'm talking about?
I do, but I don't remember the question.
Okay, so here's what I remember, and this is just going off of memory.
Yeah,
they were trying to figure out whether they should be focusing and doing their campaign on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. And
I do remember the question.
I'm gonna let you take over here.
Yep.
Give us a bit of context around this. And you said that they cut you like a big check for this one piece of advice.
They did. And if it's not this one, then I have two of them.
Okay.
Because this one is standing out very, very densely in my mind right now. So, I flew out to a company, and relatively large company. They were probably doing like $6-7 million a year, but they were at the point where they were really wanting to pour gasoline on the fire. And so every single new thing that came about felt like the best idea. Right. And it was deploying every ounce of team capital and resources in like a very sporadic way. Right. Like today we're going to, go learn YouTube. Go learn TikTok. Like, right. They wanted to do the strategy way. And it was like, quite frankly, fucking everything up. And I just got sick of hearing about it. I was like, listen, just stop. when you wake up in the morning and you break every rule that I teach you and you pick up your phone when you're laying in bed, what is the first social media app that you open? And she looked me dead in the eye and she's like, Instagram. And I was like, great. For the next 12 months, you are only allowed to focus on Instagram. And they're like, but I'm like, no. And so that was it. And that turned out to be one of the best business decisions that they have ever made in the history of their business. Like 6 months later, they were double. The things that it created for them was like a fast path to success. The level of connection and relationship with the customers, the amount of DMs, the amount of info they got of like what they wanted, what was missing, what they loved, what they didn't love. And then they were like, oh shit, we want to do more of this. And so I asked the question because it even ties into something we shared earlier, is that if you truly think that you can sustain and succeed out of alignment, you are guaranteed to fail. It is a guaranteed failure. You are just fighting time. And I think it happens because you also don't recognize that the amount of time that you are fighting is also equivalent to the amount of time that you are losing off of your life. It is not an even trade. Because the minute of suffrage of being out of alignment is not worth that 1 minute you're going to beg for to hug your kid for one more second. Or that one more minute you wanted with your father or your mother. Ever. And to try to convince yourself that it is leads to a very dark road. Resentment comes in, guilt comes in, and I honestly believe that that's where cancer is created, and pain and disease. It's our bodies telling us that the gas that we're putting into our souls does not allow our engine to function correctly. And then all the choices that we make because of that feeling further enhance the degradation. And so I truly believe in my heart of hearts that you have an obligation as a human to understand that like you are the greatest gift that has ever been given to this fucking planet. There is only one of you, but you have a duty and an obligation to make sure that that light shines bright. And you can't if you are intentionally pretending that you can't see what is fogging the lens and not cleaning it off. You owe that to the world. I believe that. You owe that to yourself. That's the path that leads to all your success, to all your clarity, to all your happiness, to all your joy, to all your relationships. And it's not an easy path. It's dark. No one's walked that path. It's yours. You don't have a flashlight. You got to believe in yourself. You got to take the step. And I wasted so much of my life waiting until I let the world back me into a corner. And the step came too late one too many times. And it took me all of that to recognize that I can proactively take that step every single day. And it's not that I'm changing my life. It's not that I'm changing my relationships. It's not that I'm changing my behaviors. It's that when I have the thought, I also have the curiosity to explore it, which allows me to truly understand it. Oh, maybe I'm just sad because I had a bad morning. Maybe I'm just scared because the event didn't sell like I thought. Oh, maybe I've just been working too hard and I need a break. Or maybe I truly don't want to do this anymore. But from that place, I make an empowered decision. Well, if I don't want to do this anymore, but I want to continue to financially support my family, I can't pull the plug. What's my plan? How would I do this? Could I hire somebody? And it's from that place that all the clarity comes.
Amazing.
I don't remember
You're speaking to me as
anything
such
I just said. I don't remember
at such a
anything
deep
I
level.
just said. I don't remember anything I just said. I just wanted to say that because I feel like out of integrity if I can't. I don't remember anything I just said.
Do you ever watch back or listen to your own content in your podcast?
Occasionally, I have a healthy relationship with it now to where like I will listen to it back if I get excited about something or like I want to hear something I said and like I like hearing it. In the past, I was like, I am not listening to my voice. I don't like what I sound like. Did I really say that? And like on the drive, when I'm driving in the car, I mount my phone to my dashboard and I let shorts play because I consume content on shorts and I subscribe to like academics and philosophers and, you know, Stoics and people like that. But somehow one of my clips came across my feed and I heard it when I was driving and I listened to it and I verbally said out loud at the end of it, I said, ouch, did I really say that? And then I had to sit with it for a minute and I was like, oh, I remembered that moment. I said that intentionally to create that polarity because it was said in a room full of people. But like it triggered an emotion in me hearing my own content. It was very interesting. It was a very out of body experience.
Crazy. Hey, I want to respect your time. We've just got a few minutes left. Do you have a hard stop?
No, I don't. I have nothing. We can keep going.
Well, I'm really glad because as you were speaking, a few things were coming up in my mind that I wanted to check in with you on. One of them is you talk about multiple businesses. I lost count of how many you're running, and you seem to be pretty happy with the amount of time and focus you're spending on your family, your health, pink stuff, guns, all that stuff. How do you split up your time? Like roughly, is it like 50-50? Is it 70-30?
No. This is a real, God, you know what? I really appreciate you asking me this question. Nobody has asked me this question in a very long time or even to spark this answer. So I appreciate this question.
Well, just for context, I've got 6 kids, right? One of them is in corporate. He's really happy. One of them is in college in France right now. She's following her passion. She wants to be a florist. I've got one of my daughters transitioned and is trans male, which took me forever to get used to. And and then my second to the youngest is trying to decide what decisions to make around college. And here I am running a business and launching a new one into a new category that I have no idea on. And it is sucking all of my time. And this is a real vulnerable position for me where I'm like, I know I'm not spending as much time as I want to with all these things happening with all my kids all over the world. So I want to hear about you. Like, how do you handle all this stuff?
Before I answer, can I reflect that back to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So you're playing a game by design that you've set yourself up to fail. Because what you're really speaking about is you're speaking about an intentional choice that's aligned with something in your vision that has the potential to allow you to do more of those things that you like and love with your family, with your kids, by freedom, time, money, energy, right? You're also jumping onto a field that you've played on many, 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 many times already. So it's not an unfamiliar sport. You're a seasoned vet. You're using the situation to create doubt rather than just calling it doubt because it's not permanent. And if you truly wanted to go travel and see the kids and find those experiences, you would pause the launch. You would double down on something you're currently doing. You would buy a pocket of time and you would book a ticket. So what it is you have to be reminded of the vision and the choices and the things that we make when they're calculated risks, because they are the calculated risk that serves the greater good or benefit, or the one that we're willing to take for the greater good. So for example, my son is 6. My daughter is 17. I was just in Disney World with them in Florida for 8 days alone as my wife was in Costa Rica. I also flew 117 times last year. That's a lot. That's hard sometimes on me. My son is as happy as he could be. No codependency, plenty of help. He's like, Daddy, when are you leaving again? I want to play with X. And then I'm home and he's like, I missed you. And then 2 minutes later, someone else comes in the door. That is the hardest thing as a parent, while also being the greatest gift that I could ever receive as a parent. That truly tells me that my son's bucket is full, that he is not codependent, that he trusts other people, that he is self-expressive, right? And so the amount of times that I've sat on an airplane, though, and rather than acknowledging that I'm just sad and I don't want to own my sadness, I'm like, oh, I'm sad because my son misses me. My son didn't text me or call me or said he missed me. In fact, an hour ago, I FaceTimed him and he told me he was too busy playing Roblox with a new friend and he'd see me when I got home. And he hung up on me 15 seconds later. And so I feel like one of my secrets is having an integrous relationship with the evidence that I'm choosing to believe, right? So in every one of my environments, I have the quote about the two wolves. It's hanging up in my bathroom in my office. It's hanging up on the wall on that side of the office. It's in my house. It's in two of the bathrooms. Because it's a constant reminder that at any given moment, there's two narratives taking place. And the one that we believe is the one that we choose to focus on. It's the one that we feed. Because on every failure that I've had as an entrepreneur, I now utilize every single one of those as the lessons that make me successful. Only because I'm willing to look at them and take a swing at them and adjust them. And I lost my train of thought on what I was saying right before that. Interesting.
You're bringing me back to...
Oh, yeah. So time management. Sorry, got you. Yeah. Time management. Go so ahead. What that was leading me to with you is that as entrepreneurs, we just have to recognize that the game that we play is one of the most powerful addictions that exists in the world. Entrepreneurship is a never-ending pit. Your to-do list will never end. The distractions will never end. The amount of knowledge you can know will never end. The amount of money you can make will never end. The amount of products you can sell will never end. The amount of things that you can do will never end. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go be a bodybuilder or I'm going to go be a marathon runner. It's I'm going to go be a gold medalist in 30 of these categories, and that sport might become obsolete in 2 years and I have to go pick up a new one. That's the game that we play. We got to recognize that when we choose to play that game, we also can't use the rules of that game as evidence for us to not want to play it, or else we just need to quit. Because it's not fair to ourselves, because what we didn't recognize, or what I didn't recognize, is that it was also clouding my ability to see all the things I was doing, to see my accomplishments, to see where I've gained, to see where I've come from, to actually have the confidence to keep going and to keep expanding. And so, yeah, I think when it comes to time for me, what I recognized is that as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, and as a human, there were a lot of times that I made up things about people with expectations, that I think they needed me every day, or that they wanted me on a call every day, or that I had to go to the office once a month, or that it was boom. And I didn't recognize how much of those narratives ran my day until I healed my codependency from a childhood wound. And I started to recognize that. Well, that led me into business, to just starting to relating to people in business, my business partners, my clients, the people who hire me, as my friends and as a human and as a relationship, to where our relationships are not linear. They're not based on, oh, we have a call on Zoom every Friday at X time. They're very asynchronous and on the spot and being in nature, to where some months I fly to Austin, some I don't. Some I fly to Ohio, some I don't. Some they fly to me, some they don't. Sometimes we get on Zoom twice a month. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Sometimes we text, sometimes we don't. And then when things come up and we need to huddle together, we huddle together, and then we all go back into our respective containers, executing that outcome until something gets in the way or something is needed to allow it to hit the finish line, until we recuperate again. And then we're like, all right, what's the next sprint? All right, I'll do this until then. You got that. If you need anything here, call me. I'll be back then. We'll approve that then. And so there's no ambiguity. Everything is put into a container And then with that, we're all operating on the regular. And so then if anything comes up, anything out of the ordinary, a fire, a lawsuit, which happens quite frequently, like things like that, then the moment that happens, we send a 911 to everybody in a group thread that we've identified that when that happens, hey, we need to talk. We jump on a call, we figure it out, we make a plan, and we kind of get back to work. And so I've kind of adopted that philosophy, and I even do it with my podcast. Like I understand that every single part of my year as a human is broken down into seasons. It's sprints, it's rest periods, it's short seasons, it's long seasons, right? Sometimes it's like those hangover seasons where it hasn't quite shifted yet and it can't figure out if it's winter or spring, right? Like some of those exist. I can't get mad that they exist because they're not permanent, right? Just because I launched a new company 7 weeks ago and that required 3 days of in-person, 12 hours a day, and the next 6 months it's meeting, it doesn't mean that that's going to be my life forever. It means that that's the price that I'm willing to pay to give this a chance of success, because this is aligned with my vision and what I want. And I also recognize that one of those costs right now is time with my kids or time with my wife, but they understand the plan and they are involved in it as well. And we all see the benefit of when this works, it's worth giving it the chance because it will allow all of this to take place. And so with that, the hardest part about how I manage my schedule, man, is the doubt that takes place when I don't have scheduled calls with like my one-on-one clients who pay me copious amounts of money for coaching. And I'm like, oh my God, it's been 9 days, right? And I'm like, no, that's my stuff. That's not theirs. And then 3 days later, like, oh my God, I've been crushing. I want to update you on this. I can't wait to see you. I'll reach back out in 2 weeks, right? But over here, I'm like, oh my God, am I failing? Are they going to fire me? Like, did I do something? Did I say something, right? Like, and all that time and all that space was just wasted energy. It was like my gift and like my creativity and my happiness being eroded away on an illusion. And so when it continued to happen, and if you were my client, Ken, I'd be like, hey man, listen, I'm really insecure right now. And I'm really afraid to say this, but we haven't talked in 8 days. And I'm sitting over here thinking that I did something. Did I say something? Are you mad at me? Like, I honestly miss you. Are we good? And then I started sending those and the responses were hilarious, man. They literally like made my day. And they're like, I love you so much. Oh my God, please keep doing this. This is awesome. And then what I started to recognize is I started getting real world evidence that about 99.9% of the time, the stories that I was making up were not true based on these false expectations. And so once that happened, I was able to surrender into how I run and how I operate business. And so now I operate all of them to where I talk to some of my partners every day for a week and then not for a month. We'll talk once a week. We'll text back and forth. We'll fly out to each other's house. We'll come to the company. And somehow magically, just like every other relationship in my life, like my best friends that I don't see on a schedule or I don't go to dinner with on a set schedule, we have these incredible relationships that foster incredible growth and incredible connection and incredible results. And so that's actually kind of how I manage my time. I just look at it in seasons. And like right now, transparently, I'm in a snowboarding season. I have been snowboarding at least 3 days a week for at least 10 hours a day. And so everything else gets moved off my calendar because it's fill my bucket time, because my event is in, a week and I'm go for 4 days, 13 hours a day teaching content. And I'm like, nope. This is the season of like prep. Like I am in race time. So I'm in my like titrate period. So I'm like snowboard. So I front loaded like, 2 months of podcasts and I knew it was coming. So I got ahead of it. And so that's the season I'm in now.
I love it. I just learned to snowboard last season.
Oh, nice, man.
It's one of the best things ever. I'm still like beginner, but I discovered it and I'm so addicted right now.
26 years for me, man.
And here's the funny thing. I loved it so much. The kids, we rented all the gear, right? And I was like, this is the best thing. So I bought full kits for everybody.
Yes.
I was like, this is perfect. And then this year, my kids only went like twice. So they're just like, yeah, we think we're done. I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh, no.
I think I pushed it too hard because I got too excited. So they're just like, oh, Dad, come on. Let's cool it off a little bit. what, parenting 101 is like, if the kids ever feel pushed, they're just going to push back. I got too excited.
Yeah. There's a funny short takeaway from that for you, for everybody listening. I joke, but I'm not joking when I say it, that if you're a parent, you have the best ability to be the best customer journey builder and the best boss and employer that's ever existed. Because if you have raised a child, if you have taken a child through the ages of 2 to 8, and then from 12 to 18, you have solved every challenge that every consumer could ever be having with your product. You have designed a series of steps to get your kids to accomplish a series of tasks. And the funny thing, and the reason I'm saying this, man, is because there are so many parallels, and probably one of the reasons you are so successful, and even the way that people portray and perceive you, like mine, based on your humanity and how you show up in the world, like those feelings and that level of empathy and that level of presence comes from the level of patience and humility required to be a parent, to recognize that in our best intentions to create the best outcome, that we still created harm on something we love more than anything words can describe, with no ill intention whatsoever. Like, that is a life experience that creates humility. So the reason my favorite
you try to do so much for your clients, and they're just like, hey, hold off. Like, that's enough for now.
And so the reason I say parents are like the best entrepreneurs is because when you have that level, that's the same level of connection required to get in with your customers, to understand their behaviors, to understand their desires, to be able to produce content and get on video and say the things that they're thinking and feeling. And then the joke I say is like, I'll have a company hire me, for 6 figures to design customer journeys for them. And then the joke at the end, when they're like, dude, this was worth its weight in gold, I'm like, okay, I'm going to upset you for a minute. And they're like, okay, cool. And I was like, you have a kid, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how old are they? And they're like 6. And I was like, you ready? I was like, we've been working for 3 days, and I'm going to summarize this in a 1-minute story about your 6-year-old in the morning. And he's like, okay. And I was like, so scenario A, you wake up, your 6-year-old comes in your bedroom at 6 a.m. and you say, okay, my son's name is Branson. All right, Branson, scenario A, I need you to go brush your teeth, put your new clothes on, make your breakfast, pack your backpack, put it by the front door, brush your hair, and be ready to get in the car in 1 hour. Go. And scenario B is, hey, bud, we only have an hour before school, so we got to brush our hair, we got to get breakfast, we got to do all that. But right now, do me a favor, just go in the closet, pick out a new outfit, and get dressed, and come see me when you're done. And then he comes and sees me. I'm like, oh, cool. Now that I have you, let me brush your hair. Awesome. Hey, now go make your breakfast. Then you can get your iPad and set your timer for 15 minutes. Which one guarantees I get out the door with my son on time, A or B?
Hands down, B.
B is exactly how to build a customer journey that will make you billions of dollars. And that's all I do. That's all I teach. And I'm sharing this because, yes, I'm very good at it and my application is very good, but I just want everybody to think about that, to just understand that, like, what we're doing with customers, what we're doing with clients, potential clients, with colleagues, with peers, with employees, when we're helping them grow, when we're helping them achieve something, we're helping our employees get better at their job, we're helping our customers achieve a pain point or resolve a pain point in their life, right? We're doing a lot of things under the same lens that we would be in raising a child or laying out a plan for our best friend to lose 10 pounds if we knew how. But all too often, because our industry is so built on transaction and acquisition, we forget that that's the most important part of our job, because that's what determines the success that somebody's going to have, which is what carries all the weight of the success of your business or your company, because that's what dictates how people talk about you. That's what dictates the results that they got. That's what gives you the feedback on how to make adjustments and iterations. But if all you focus on is the acquisition, all you're doing is convincing 15 people to swipe right on you and then ghosting them when they show up to the restaurant. That doesn't lead to a good reputation, a good business, or anything sustainable or scalable.
George, I feel like I need to hire you at some point.
Done, man.
What you're saying is like, gosh, I got so many ideas, but it's the follow through and the execution that's probably the part that needs the most help, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And everything can be so integrated if we put all these things in place.
Yeah, but and here's the thing, and this is and I'm gonna give you a nugget and everybody listening a nugget because I know who's listening to this podcast. And your nugget, because I am you, by the way, I am tech obsessed, right? So like when I wanted to learn ManyChat, it was a month before the CEO called me and said, you just built the best converting ManyChat sequence I've ever seen, right? Like I understand all the intricacies of all the parts, right? When it comes to customer journeys, the trap is thinking you can fully integrate a monogamous relationship. If I asked you to sit down and I gave you a week at the beginning of January and I said, lay out a hour by hour plan for how to guarantee that over the next year, you maintain and deepen the relationship with your wife without your involvement, could you do that?
100% no.
No, it's absolutely fucking impossible. It is impossible because it changes. But what I can guarantee you is that if you implore the principles of a foundational strong relationship of like, you know what, over the next year, I am going to focus on automating this. I'm going to remind myself of anniversaries. I'm going to remind myself in my calendar of specific dates. I'm going to make sure I give myself a month to plan for my kids' birthdays. I want to make sure I surprise my wife for a birthday. And you put that in your calendar. You're using science to allow your art to be effective. You're using an integration as a reminder to hold yourself accountable to what it is you want to achieve, but you can't fully integrate the whole thing. And that's the mistake that people make with customer journeys. To win with a customer journey, the only thing that you need to be thinking as any level of an entrepreneur is if I'm going to tell somebody to go somewhere, am I confident that after they get there, the steps that follow have a chance to get them success? And if the answer is no, you don't send them there, but you don't go design a 30-day blank, blank, blank. You whip out a couple sticky notes and you're like, okay, what's missing? What order would this go in? And should I send him another DM and then 2 emails? Wait, should that one be a video? Oh, cool. Got it. I need to record these 4 things. Done. Now I can go confidently send that to everybody else. And you just built a customer journey. It's not perfect. It's iterative. It's a relationship. No different than our marriage. Your marriage pre-kid is very different post 1 kid, 2 kids, 6 kid, and now soon to be empty nester. The dynamic changes. Things have to be renegotiated. Communication patterns, space. There's a lot more quiet time. How are we going to fill this time? We're not being a carpool anymore. Oh, now we're getting phone calls about our kids' marriage problems. Okay, this is new. How are we going to handle this? Are we going to fly out together? What are we like? The foundation stays the same, but based on the circumstance, you iterate the art. And customer journeys are no different. So just because right now, if you DM me customer journey on Instagram, you get a incredible training that should cost $1,000 for free on customer journey, doesn't mean that when you DM me customer journey in 6 months, it's going to be identical. Because if it stops working, or I think of something different, or somebody gives me an idea, I might go make a quick audit and I'll throw it back up. But winning with customer journey is just changing the way you think about them. Understanding that human beings thrive with a plan and with clarity. And if you have it and somebody else doesn't, you are the only person they can give their credit card and trust to. The end. And so when you think about it like that, understand that every time you have an interaction with a human, that is a relationship. If you are in a relationship, you are either leading or following a customer journey. The choice is yours. I choose to lead every one of them until they ask to lead it. That's my assumption in life. Baristas, waitresses, like there are 7 coffee shops where I live that listen to my podcast while they make coffee in the morning because I've told them all about the show. Like I am so bullish, man. I am so bullish. It's crazy. Sorry. It made me lose my train of thought because I was a little embarrassed for a minute.
No, it's good. It's good.
What was I saying right before that?
You're talking about customer journey and how it evolves. You're talking about Instagram.
Oh, yeah. And so with it, what you want to be thinking about is when you understand that every interaction with a human is a relationship and you're going to guide them somewhere, just ensure you have clarity and confidence in the 5 steps that follow the first step. And if you have that, you will win over everything else. And so what I mean by that is like, if you're posting an Instagram story and you want somebody to click on a link, you have to ask yourself, what's the easiest way for them to click on the link, not what's the easiest way for me to share the link. Those are two very different questions. One will get you results and one will get you frustration. When I am on my podcast and I want to send somebody a link, I very intentionally don't share the link first. Because 90% of my podcast audience follows me on Instagram, I tell them to DM me one word and I will reply with the link. So all they have to do is click it. And then I tell them the name of the link. Because what I'm offering is a way to make it easier to get in. But what that's ensuring is that they have a better chance of consuming whatever it is I'm sending them. And so then I was like, oh, they want this video training. And it was on Vimeo. And I was like, oh, but I need to be able to provide context. So I wrote a quick Google Doc and I opened it. I'm like, hey, the below video is the 5 series of customer journeys. These are foundationally required. And irregardless of your business, you need these. When you are done with these, if you want what's next, below the video is a link to our event. And that's where I teach this in depth in your business for our customer journey event. And so I embedded the Vimeo video in a Google Doc. And then I made the Google Doc view only. And that became my new lead magnet. And it started selling event tickets. I didn't get their email.
Amazing.
I didn't put them in an email sequence. I was like, what is the least path of friction to get them what it is that they want? And that's how I built the customer journey. And so the reason I said this, and I said it so long-winded, is I watch a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in the trap of designing it. But if your wife gets mad at you and says, I need you to change this to fix it, your wife is not going to be happy if you spend the next 30 days planning on how to do it while continuing the shitty behavior, or planning how to do it while not starting any new behavior. She's going to want you immediately to take a new action to show the result. And so that's how we got to cut into play.
I love it. I love it. George, I've got to say, and I've got to wrap this up in a second, but
yeah, man,
this is, out of all the conversations I've had, and my podcast is pretty new. We're like 35 episodes in, but I've had a lot of people teach amazing things, world-class strategies. They've taught this 100 times. This is the one podcast where I feel the most like you're speaking to me. Everything you said was not a strategy, the 5 steps, the 7 things. You're talking to me. And I hope that for the listeners, there's someone out there, even if there's one person who they feel like this is speaking directly to them, then I feel this is so worth it. And I want to thank you for, well, the word is so overused, but vulnerability. Without coming with a script, without having, the lead magnet you want to drop in or whatever it is, you just came, and the word I'm going to use is naked, no pretense, just sharing what's on your mind. And I appreciate that. It felt different. It felt really, really real. So I appreciate you.
Man. Yeah.
If somebody were to,
you.
I appreciate that.
Can I say one thing about what you
Go
just
ahead.
said? Because how you summarize that carries a lot of weight, and I don't want to let it pass by. Strategies and tactics are very, very powerful. But what you have to recognize is that it's the person who utilizes the strategies and tactics that makes them powerful. And so do I use strategies and tactics? 1000%, but they're only effective because of what I shared on today's show. And so I speak to you, Ken, and I speak to everybody listening to this from the place that I reflect on the most, because this is what I reflect on. And where my humility comes from was learning all of these lessons and recognizing and truly having to understand the weight of the responsibility that comes from truly accepting that it is only up to me. 100%. And so that means that how I see the world, my beliefs about the world, the stories I tell myself about the world, are the things that are dictating my actions that are creating my results. And the only person who can change those thoughts is me. And so that's what the work you have to dive into. And it's beautiful work because it's not hard. It's actually easier because it's just every day. Oh, got to tweak that. Oh, we'll say that different. Oh, won't do that again. Oh, gonna tweak that. Oh, do this. And you just kind of fall in love with the secret that's needed to be successful as an entrepreneur. And I hate to use another cliche, but it's recognizing that the only way to win the gold medal is to fall in love with the process and not the race. And it applies and rings true at a very deep level when you recognize that when you apply it to yourself, it waterfalls and permeates down to every single thing in your ecosystem, including your business.
Amazing. George, thank you so much for sharing all of that. This is one of the ones I will listen back to 100%. George, if somebody were to want to get in touch with you, you did mention your Instagram channel. Is there any other way if somebody wants to get work with you, learn more about you?
Yeah. So I always kind of answer this in a bucket, because you're probably in either one of two buckets. You're in bucket of like, okay, I'm interested to learn more of what this guy has to say. His straitjacket is my slice of crazy. If you're in that bucket, my podcast is the absolute best place for you to start. It's called The Mind of George Show. It's 400 episodes deep. I give away everything for free. We have conversations about customer journey, marketing, mindset, and I teach the how of a lot of these things, models, principles. I share all of that for free. So that's The Mind of George Show. Everywhere podcasts are found, mindofgeorge.com. And the other place, and the place to directly connect with me, is my Instagram. And so my Instagram is small by design. I deleted a couple million followers a few years ago. And our only KPI is that somebody gets value from what we share that day. And so my Instagram is truly us. My team posts the content and I manage the DMs. We post a lot and it's all valuable. It's all super helpful. That's me selfishly saying that, but I believe it to be true. If you have a question, if something came up on the podcast today, if you want to know about our events, if you have a question, if I know somebody, if there's anything my team or I can do to help you, you have mine and my wife's permission to slide into my DMs. So you just have to shoot me a DM on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is It's George Bryant. So ITS and then George, George, and then Bryant, like Kobe, BRYANT, rest in peace, Black Mamba.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, check the description. If you're listening on a podcast, go to the show notes. We've got all the links there so you can jump straight into that. George, thank you so much. And I definitely will be reconnecting with you in the near future for my own personal growth, really.
Man, for sure. Stoked.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end, listening to the end. And the fact that you did tells me that there was something about this that was really valuable to you, because an hour of your time, or even a little bit more this time, I don't take that lightly as a busy business owner. I was I'm grateful that you spent this time with both me and with George, and we'll see you in the next podcast.